Hi, and welcome to the lecture on decision making and climate change. We're going to learn today about what you can do to reduce your carbon footprint and therefore your impacts on climate, and what society can do to reduce global carbon footprint and impacts on climate. Want us to remember the greenhouse effect? This is always the central idea that we're going to be referring back to. If you need to review this concept, I encourage you to do that by watching the greenhouse effect video. What I want to remind everyone about are the places where energy move and change relative to the greenhouse effect. So remember, energy comes from the sun. It either enters the Earth's atmosphere or is reflected. And recall, this is visible energy. When it reaches the Earth's surface, it might reflect off the surface, or it might be absorbed and converted to infrared energy. That infrared energy, when it's emitted, if it encounters a greenhouse gas, it can be absorbed and re-emitted by those greenhouse gases, or it can move into space if a greenhouse gas is not encountered. What you have to remember is the more greenhouse gases we have in the atmosphere, the more likely we are to absorb infrared, and the more likely we are to have the Earth's atmosphere heat up, and therefore the surface of the Earth will heat up. This will cause climate change. We're going to be talking today about how we can reduce our impact on climate change through reducing the amount of greenhouse gases we emit in our lives or that society emits in general. There are two websites I'm going to walk you through, and then I have 3 videos that I've chosen for you to watch that talk a little bit more about personal choices or societal choices that can impact climate change. So let's first go to an EPA website that lists a few things you can do at home to reduce your impact on climate. So this is the EPA website, and I'm just going to walk you through a few things that the EPA suggests you do to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. One is to change 5 light bulbs to Energy Star qualified light bulbs that produce less heat and use less energy than the standard light bulbs you might be used to. In general, if you're going to buy a product, a printer, a washing machine, a refrigerator, you might want to look for the EPA's Energy Star label. This tells you that the appliances have lower greenhouse gas emissions than typical. If you raise your thermostat in the summer or lower it in the winter by just 1 or 2 degrees, you can actually reduce both how much money you're spending and your greenhouse gas emissions. When you buy a home or are living in an apartment that you rent, you might want to look into how well insulated the home is to reduce the amount of energy that's lost during heating and cooling. It's always a good idea to reduce how much waste we create, to reuse as much as possible, and to recycle as much as possible to, again, lower the amount of things that go into the landfills. And the less we put in the landfills, the lower our greenhouse gas emissions. Using water efficiently actually reduces greenhouse gas emissions as well. So you want to conserve water as much as possible. As much as possible, we want to reduce how much yard waste we produce or how much garbage we put in our landfills. Landfills produce a lot of greenhouse gases. So the more we can reduce how much we put in landfills, the better off we are. There are a few other things that we can do. If you have a choice, it's always better to purchase energy from power plants that use green energy, wind energy, solar energy, than to use power that comes from power plants that use things like coal energy or gas energy, because coal and gas are fossil fuels and they produce carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas. You should go back and look at that carbon footprint that we calculated, recalculate it, see what you can do to reduce your carbon footprint. And I would be interested to know if any of you have had conversations with people in your family or your friends to see what they think about climate change and their carbon footprint. A second website that I just wanted to show you has to do with reducing the climate impacts of driving. We drive an awful lot to and from work, to and from home, on vacation. And there are certain things that we can do to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide we produce even as we drive. So the US Federal Highway Administration has come up with a few steps that we could take. One, of course, is buying a fuel efficient vehicle. That might not be possible for everyone. Another is to leave your car at home, walk to work or school, um, ride your bicycle, take public transportation just one day a week, and that can save a lot of carbon dioxide from being emitted into the atmosphere. It turns out that if you maintain your vehicle, that's one of the best ways to reduce carbon footprint. You can make sure that your engine is operating as efficiently as possible. If you make sure your tires are pumped up, you will be using less fuel as you drive. There are other things that you can do. Um, Telecommute, reduce how much you're carrying around, know where you intend to go before you go. Don't run individual small trips, but combine a bunch of different trips into one trip. There are many things that we can do, and the more we do, the better off I think the planet will be. I'm going to have you watch 3 videos that I've selected that talk about things you can do to reduce your carbon footprint. And these are the 2 websites we visited. I think deciding to change the way in which we live is a personal choice. And that's in fact what you need to decide. It's okay to decide that you're not going to change your life in order to reduce your impact on climate. It's also okay to make a choice to change your life. It's really a personal decision. In some ways, it's a decision that society needs to make. I'm hoping that now, after this course, you have enough information about climate change to make your own informed decision about climate change and your own carbon footprint. Now let's watch 3 videos that provide additional details about what you and society can do to limit the emission of greenhouse gases and the impact of humans on climate change.
I don't think it's realistic to expect us to reduce our need for energy. As populations grow, as developing countries look at developed countries, you know, who's going to sit there and say, well, okay, you know, you made it, we'll do our part and sacrifice now and never become what you've become, you know. So the need will always be there. The challenge is finding ways to meet that need. And I think it's really comes down to efficiency and cleaner sources of energy. Now, I am not an expert in solar energy, wind energy, nuclear energy, but these are all cleaner forms of energy that I think should comprise a what I'll call an environmentally sustainable portfolio for energy use. And I don't believe they've been used enough or developed enough. I think efficiency, I don't want to say standards because that gets to regulations and that gets, people get worked up over that. But I do think promoting efficiency, rewarding efficiency is another approach that the leaders of the world, the leading industrialized nations of the world, I think should take on and share what is learned with developing nations so we can all move forward. And a lot of it is attitude. If you view this as regulation, rules being imposed upon us, we're not free to become what, the business we want to become, it will never go anywhere. And I understand that, frankly. But if the attitude is we're embracing new technologies and new capabilities to develop a new way of doing things, there's a shift there. And I think you see this when you see a Prius on the road. The Prius is kind of a statement, and it's not, oh, I don't want to, pollute the atmosphere. I've fallen victim to government regulation. It's, hey, look at me. I'm driving a car that meets my needs, and I'm doing it in an environmentally sustainable way. It's just a different way of looking at it. So the big challenge for me is not the technology, it's the mindset. And for a long time, the mindset has been one of, the advocates saying, we need higher efficiency standards. You must stop driving your SUV, and the natural reaction is, who are you to tell me what I can or can't do? This is the United States of America. If the mindset were, hey, we can change things. We can make a better tomorrow where we're less dependent on foreign oil, where we have cleaner skies, and all it takes is some ingenuity in these areas. I think people will invest. I think people would make the commitment.
My question for My Climate ME is to ask what we as the public can do to reduce the impact of climate change on the environment.
Hi, congratulations Alexandra on winning the vote for the best question. I'm David here at the University of Exeter, and I'm here to try and answer your question. In my mind, there are three main areas we can think about to try and help mitigate against climate change. Energy and heating and cooling of your house. There's how you adapt to increased amounts of water, runoff and things, and droughts. And also about your travel, which will use up a lot of energy. So those are the three areas. So for your house, you can think about what would you do in hotter conditions, like we've had this current heat wave. How can you keep the place cool without using air conditioning? Because air conditioning uses up a lot of energy. So you can do passive cooling, shutters. You can learn from hot countries, in Southern Europe, say, and how they adapted to very hot conditions. You can insulate your house so it's better in winter, doesn't use up as much energy to heat the house, and that saves a lot of carbon emissions. For the water side, you can think about the recent wet winter we've had and how the water runs off your land and garden and grounds a lot. How can you save that? You can put in water butts, you can put in irrigation or drainage in your property to try and channel the water. If you store the water, you've got a double win, because when it's a hot summer, you can then use the water without having to buy water from the water companies that uses energy again. So you've actually saved twice, really. You've stopped the runoff and you've saved energy from having to buy water in the summertime. The third one is on travel. That uses up a lot of energy, and obviously we all need to travel and we like to travel, but you can try and do it. You try and avoid unnecessary trips, but also try and do things that don't use up as much energy. So public transport, or try and cycle to work if you live near to work, things like that. All of that helps because it stops us from using fossil fuels, and those are what are causing the climate change.
How to reduce your carbon footprint. Your carbon footprint is how many greenhouse gases you release in your daily activities. Be remembered by your good deeds, not your carbon emissions. You will need a deep concern for the future and a sense of personal responsibility. Step 1. Turn your thermostat up in the summer or down in the winter by just 2 degrees, and you'll prevent hundreds of pounds of carbon dioxide from being released each year. Close doors to rooms that you are not using to maximize heating and air conditioning. Insulate windows and doors to save even more heating costs. Step 2. Turn off and unplug your computer, TV, and other electronics when you're not using them. Even electronics in sleep mode draw power. Leaving your TV cable box on 24 hours a day uses about 65% as much energy as a standard refrigerator. Step 3. Change all the incandescent bulbs in your home to compact fluorescent bulbs, which use about 75% less energy. Step 4. Do your laundry or run a dishwasher only when you have a full load. It saves water and it's an excuse not to clean. Step 5. Eat local. An organic, out-of-season vegetable from the other side of the world may sound delicious, but it had to make that trip on a huge container ship. Take a canvas tote with you shopping so you have a ready and better answer to the question, paper or plastic. Step 6. Bring your own cup or mug when you buy coffee and stop tossing an average of 20 pounds of disposable cups a year. Step 7. Cut back on bottled water. Most tap water is perfectly safe to drink, and making the plastic and transporting the bottles uses huge quantities of fossil fuels. Step 8. Plant a tree. Trees help reduce greenhouse gases, and every one counts. Consider it a peace offering to the earth. Step 9. Don't jump in your car every time you feel the urge to run an errand. Plan and consolidate your trips to cut down on gas. Step 10. When you can, carpool, use public transportation, or ride your bicycle. Or walk, proud to be treading lightly. Did you know? Cattle produce as much as 37% of the atmosphere's methane, a greenhouse gas 20 times more potent than carbon dioxide.